I'd like to ask you on behalf of our viewers to help us differentiate between Alzheimer's and dementia, just to have a clarification on the terms.
Important condition that's a silent epidemic that is slowly eating into the lives of all our citizens, particularly as we age, is this overarching condition called dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term which includes all forms of the condition which result in what we call cognitive or decline in thinking abilities. There are many reasons as to why a person can get dementia. The commonest cause of this condition or commonest reason for dementia is Alzheimer's disease. Physical and mental exercise is one of the most important things that we need. So sports not just only encourages physical activity, but it also is very important for mental stimulation and also the socializing that it involves. So we need to be socially connected, socially active. So physical, mental activity and also social connectedness and social activity. And also making sure that diseases like blood pressure and diabetes are again detected early, and if need be treated, that we treat it optimally, because that would lead to further damage to our blood vessels and so on, which impair the blood supply to the brain, and ultimately Alzheimer's as well as other dementias are brain diseases.
What is Alzheimer's disease and what is dementia? Are they one and the same? We clarified all of this and more with Professor Shehan Williams. Stay tuned.
Some bonds give more returns. Get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LMDtv Finance.
The latest issue of LMD is available at lmdmall.lk as well as selected supermarkets and bookshops. You can also access the digital version on Press Reader, Maxter, our social media platforms and WhatsApp.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is Alzheimer's awareness, and we are here with Professor Shehan Williams, who is a professor in psychiatry and also the president of Lanka Alzheimer's Foundation. Professor, very nice to have you with us and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Ruwandi. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss this very important condition, and I am open to discuss this further as we go along.
Thank you, Professor. It's becoming a buzzword these days, for better and worse. But before we get into the conversation per se, I'd like to ask you on behalf of our viewers to help us differentiate between Alzheimer's and dementia, just to have a clarification on the terms.
Okay. So the important condition that's a silent epidemic that is slowly eating into the lives of all our citizens, particularly as we age, is this overarching condition called dementia. Dementia is the umbrella term which includes all forms of the condition which result in what we call cognitive or decline in thinking abilities. Usually we see it first as a decline in memory, when people tend to forget and increasingly find it difficult to conduct their day-to-day activities because of forgetfulness. The reason for getting dementia is varied. There are many reasons as to why a person can get dementia. Some treatable, but unfortunately the majority of the conditions are not treatable, and they are due to certain changes in the brain that come on, particularly as we age. And the commonest cause of this condition or commonest reason for dementia is Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's and dementia are not separate from each other. Dementia is the umbrella term which also includes Alzheimer's disease. I must go on to say that it is the most common form of dementia which affects 50 to 70% of people who get the condition. But there are other forms of dementia as well. The commonest other reasons being what we call vascular dementia, where people get minor strokes or their brain is affected because of a lack of blood supply to the brain. In addition, thereafter we have conditions like Parkinson's disease and other conditions that bring on changes to the brain. So that is the sort of overall view of dementia. Now, if I may dwell a bit further, there are some conditions, maybe 5% of the conditions may have an underlying reason. So these may be due to vitamin deficiencies, in some cases excessive use of alcohol, and other endocrine or hormone deficiencies like thyroid deficiency, or sometimes even brain injury, brain tumors, post-stroke, and so on and so forth.
Professor, from what you were saying, it seems like so many causes, there are so many causes and reasons for it. Is it always possible to pinpoint a cause? Let's say if a patient comes with Alzheimer's disease, is it possible to pinpoint a cause or not?
Yes, most of the time we would identify a cause, and therefore it's important to meet with a doctor in the first instance, because many investigations may have to be done, including blood tests and sometimes even further brain imaging, which includes scans of the brain. Now, in addition, to confirm that the person has dementia, usually we would do a small test which we call, some people call the memory test, where we get a person to do certain activities or work along with somebody, and where their memory and ability to think and act is tested, based on which we come up with a score which gives us a fair idea as to the person's progress or where they are in terms of the dementia, whether it's early stage, whether it's moderate stage, or whether it's late stage.
Talking about the early stage, we have heard that you can delay the onset of Alzheimer's to a certain extent. Can you explain how this happens?
Yes. So, as I said, dementia has many reasons. The commonest cause is Alzheimer's disease, and particularly in terms of Alzheimer's disease or even the other treatable causes, if we identify early, we can do certain intervention which will delay the progression. Particularly for most conditions including Alzheimer's disease, there is no cure at the moment. There are some studies which are being conducted globally, particularly in the US and UK, which show some hope in terms of newer medicines coming in, but it's going to be a long way till we receive it here, and also it has a huge cost implication. So for the moment, we need to prevent, and when a person gets it early, identify it early, and thereby enable the person to start on the right interventions, which are both medical as well as non-medical. So I think it's important to understand both factors and keep the person optimally managed in terms of the early stages of dementia.
I'd like to talk to you more about that, but before we go into the measures that we can take, I'd also like to ask you what the situation is like in Sri Lanka in terms of patients as well as those at risk.
Yes. So dementia is an under-recognized problem, and many people think it only affects Western population in Europe and so on, but that's not the case. It is as prevalent as it is globally in Sri Lanka as well, and age is the biggest risk factor. And Sri Lanka, thankfully, we have a longest life expectancy in the South Asian region, but nevertheless, we also have the fastest aging population. So currently, nearly 15% of our population is above 60 years of age, but with time, or very soon, by 2030, 20% of our population is going to be over the age of 60, which means every fifth person is going to be over the age of 60. And most of us, if not all of us, will live till 80 years, 85, 90, perhaps even beyond, because that's the prediction once we've sort of survived the initial stages of our life. So then, it's a silent epidemic that's going to affect many of us. Currently, we estimate, we don't have prevalence studies in Sri Lanka, and we estimate around 400 to 500,000 being affected by this condition. But as we age, and also when the age structure changes with more people moving into their 70s and 80s, then the risk of getting Alzheimer's is higher. Now, memory decline and cognitive impairment is not a part of aging. Now, we think everybody is going to start to forget when they age. That's not really true. In fact, you can live till 100 or even beyond with good memory, and we see many people living good lives late into their twilight years. Despite, if not for this condition affecting us, which we consider a disease process, we can all live well. So when this condition strikes, we need to identify it early. We, if possible, have to prevent it, and prevention strategies have to start many, many years before. But as you said, it's going to be a huge burden with the older population, with younger people migrating as well, and many people developing this condition. We are, I think, inadequately prepared to face the consequences, both medically, socially and economically, to address the burden of this condition.
I have so many questions for you, but I think I'll start with the prevention. We've heard that mental and physical exercises are one of the ways, but there must be more that people can do, like you said, at an early age, to make sure that the onset at least is delayed, if not completely, prevented. Can you share with us some techniques?
Yes. So, Ruwandi, as you rightly said, physical and mental exercise is one of the most important things that we need. And unfortunately, our lifestyles are such that particularly when it comes to physical exercise, we are often lackadaisical. We do not do enough. And this starts from school age. This is where even when it comes to schooling, I think children need to be introduced to a sport. They need to be exercising from a very young age, so that they will live a good life when they are older. So it's just more than running to tuition classes and to school. It's also about physically cultivating a habit of regular exercise, of perhaps doing a sport which we can use or they can use later on as they go into their later lives. So I was very happy when I met an older person very recently. She's also getting early dementia, but she was into the master sports activities. You may have heard about it. Sri Lanka does have a very good system where older people can compete. She was 77 and still doing the triple jump.
Wow.
And I was a bit worried about her, but she's going around and also doing it globally and things like that, and competing at that age, and not just from Colombo, but outside the country. I mean, in Gampaha district. I was so happy to hear this, and she seems to be part of a very active community. So sports not just only encourages physical activity, but it also is very important for mental stimulation, as you know, and also the socializing that it involves. So we need to be socially connected, socially active. So physical, mental activity, and also social connectedness and social activity. And that's one of the key things that has come up during particularly the COVID and so on, when lots of older people became isolated, and the more isolated you became, the more rapid the decline. And I'm part of the Lanka Alzheimer's Foundation, where many older clients with dementia attend and participate and so on, and we have an active activity center. And one of the saddest things for us to see was that during this period of closure, many of our clients who were very active participants had declined considerably. Some had even passed away during that period because of the social isolation. So going further than mental and physical exercises, I think it's all about a healthy lifestyle as well. So diet plays a very important role in the sense that we eat healthy. There is no particular diet, but healthy eating, maintaining a healthy body weight, keeping our BMI within its parameters, and also making sure that diseases like blood pressure and diabetes are again detected early, and if need be treated, that we treat it optimally, because that would lead to further damage to our blood vessels and so on, which impair the blood supply to the brain, and ultimately Alzheimer's as well as other dementias are brain diseases.
It's time now to take a very short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about Alzheimer's awareness.
What makes a truly awesome insurance company? Is it the skills to manage big numbers and big responsibilities? Well, that's definitely part of it. But there's more. It's the people. They're awesome. Super passionate about looking out for others and putting in their time for people's finances. It's not just the people. It's how we do things that's awesome. From being trendsetters of the industry to being connectors or inventors. It's about well-being and how we achieve it. Our teams hustle non-stop to meet the needs of the people. That's why we're on the rise. And it's not just about how we do things either. It's about how we improve things. Helping our clients thrive in a world that's full of awesome goals to achieve. Making the maximum out of the minimum. But wait, there's more to it. There's one last thing that truly makes an insurance company awesome. It's that we care about our people and our customers. All of this combined, it's been a pretty awesome year. And we're excited for tomorrow.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with Professor Shehan Williams, who's a professor in psychiatry and the president of Lanka Alzheimer's Foundation. And Professor, I mean, there's so many things to read online and there's so much of misinformation and disinformation as well. So one of the rumors that we hear is like people's increased use of social media, increased use of smartphones, all of this also have an impact. Is this true?
Yes, that's a good question, I must say. But there is still no evidence to say that increased use of social media is detrimental. In fact, I mean, I see no reason why it should be, because it's more about, again, it's a different form of communication, but still it keeps your mind active, you're mentally stimulated. For older people, it's invariably challenging to use these gadgets. So learning new things, new activities, trying to negotiate the challenges that come with all these social structures and so on, I must say Ruwandi is perhaps good. So I don't think anyone should be discouraged from using the computers or the gadgets or engaging in social media, at least for now.
Thank you, Professor. We spoke of how to prevent. I want to also ask about how to help those who have got the disease. I mean, how can the process be, let's say, slowed down, or how can they live a normal life?
Yeah, so that's another big area that we need to think about, because the family usually gets very upset when a member of their family is diagnosed with dementia. But understanding the illness and its consequences and deciding how we can best support the person, I think is key to enabling a good life for the person concerned. So most people, when people age or get dementia, become overprotective, think they should be going out, they should not be doing anything, that they should be kept at home or put in a nursing home or something like that. So those actions perhaps can be more harmful than beneficial for the person. It's about us creating a society that understands that this is a condition that will affect many of us, and that we need to create an enabling environment, which we call a dementia-friendly society, where everybody acknowledges that this is a condition that a person has, but at the same time enabling the person to live a life as normal as possible. Now, I do know many people with early dementia who drive, who get around, who do their activities, cook, manage on their own, and do many things together, and the families are able to support them, knowing their limitations, so that they don't put too many pressures or expectations on them, as well as support them when necessary to get along. So we don't want families to say, "Mommy, you're now having dementia, you shouldn't go out, you should be staying at home, you're not supposed to drive." Yes, there comes a point when a person has to be stopped from driving, but in the initial stages, maybe they cannot drive with accompaniment, with somebody going along with them. So it's a very dynamic situation. We need to handle as per the individual strengths and weaknesses and the supports that we have. So depending on that, we should encourage the person to live as actively as possible, take them out for walks, help them to engage in sports, keep them stimulated and active, engage them in social events and activities, and all those factors will help to delay the progression of the disease.
Professor, you spoke a lot about how to prevent, how to help those who have got Alzheimer's. If I ask you on behalf of another segment of society, organizations in particular, again there are disinformation and misinformation that stress and imbalances in work and life can all trigger, let's say, the disease. Is this true? And if so, what can we do about it?
So stress is an inevitable part of modern life, and I'm sure we are all used to it from our young age, and we are adjusting to it. And I think that is the biggest change that we have to deal with. Now, stress is a very vague term, I must say. What we mean by stress is sometimes the way we look at things. But having a lot of mental work or physical work by itself is not stressful. It can be good for the brain. It keeps the brain active. It keeps the brain challenged. So in that sense, it could be a positive thing that could help prevent dementia. So I don't think there is clear evidence to say that stress per se, as long as we balance our life reasonably, we have built into it times of relaxation, of time for socializing, for mixing with people, for exercising and so on. Nevertheless, if stress leads to a person getting depression, then that is no doubt a risk factor. So untreated depression, prolonged depression and so on is known to be a risk factor for dementia.
Like you said, I love that you said that stress is part of life and we are getting used to it. Before I ask you my last question for the day, was Alzheimer's disease always there, unspoken of? Because it seems like suddenly everyone is talking about it. So I keep wondering whether was it always there and we are only noticing it now, or whether there is actually an increase in the number of patients.
Yeah. So I'm sure Alzheimer's disease was always there. I think Alois Alzheimer, after whom this disease is named, identified this condition in the early 1900s, where particularly in a female, unfortunately females are more affected by this condition than males, and so it's been there, but for two reasons we have not really identified it. Because one, we always thought it was just part of normal aging when somebody forgot, and number two, we didn't live as long as we did then. So again, we are living better lives, and other faculties. If you have a heart problem, we could have various interventions that will keep our heart going, can bypass it, we can do various things. Similarly, if our feet are not working or we have hip problems, we can do a hip replacement, we can do a kidney transplant, we can do many things. But when it comes to the final frontier, the brain, there is little that we can do to remedy any harm that happens. So in that sense, if we are living longer, ultimately, I think the brain is the last frontier to give up. So we need to prevent this disease, and even if we can't, we need to try to keep it going as long as we can healthily.
Thank you, Professor. It's been such an insightful conversation, but before we let you go, I'd like to ask you, we mark September as World Alzheimer's Month, and September 21st is marked as World Alzheimer's Day. Looking at it from a national perspective, since Sri Lanka is having a significant risk due to this disease, how would you say that awareness, understanding and collaboration can be used to help us manage the disease, prevent it as much as possible and overcome the challenges?
Yeah. So as I said, Sri Lanka has an aging population, young people are migrating, and the older people, many of us will be on our own as we age. So we need to have a national plan, we need to have a national action plan for dementia. And unfortunately, we are not thinking ahead, we are not planning for the future. Even as we think of economic recovery, we need to factor in these factors with the aging population. We may have to make certain provisions, including extending our retirement age, as well as thinking of how we support older people who may have many conditions, including dementia. And I think the government has to start thinking about it. We need to see this more in election manifestos, how elderly people will be managed and conditions like dementia, as well as people realizing that this is a problem that can affect them as well as their family members, and they need to consider how they are going to plan for their future when it comes to insurance, when it comes to saving up their finances and so on, and how best as a community we can have a collaborative joint effort. Dementia is everybody's business, cannot be let it be confined to individuals and their carers, because ultimately it's a condition that will eventually strike many of us as well as our families.
Thank you, Professor. We've been in conversation with Professor Shehan Williams, who's a professor in psychiatry and the president of Lanka Alzheimer's Foundation. Professor, it was such a lovely and very insightful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again for giving us this opportunity to speak about it. Thank you.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.